Michael Bennett woke later than he used to, though he hadn't meant to. The light was already settled against the kitchen wall, resting there without asking permission. He sat at the small table in his socks, one foot tucked under the chair, the other flat on the cold tile. The coffee in his mug had gone untouched long enough to lose its steam. He noticed that only after lifting it. Outside, a truck moved along the gravel road, tires humming low. Someone headed somewhere early enough to matter. Michael watched it pass until the sound thinned out and disappeared. He didn't follow it with his thoughts. He just let it go. The house felt different these days. Not empty exactly, but quieter in a way that didn't explain itself. The refrigerator clicked on. Somewhere down the hall, the floor gave a small creak, the kind you stop noticing after years of walking the same path. Retirement had arrived without friction. There had been handshakes, cake in the teacher's lounge, a few speeches that ran longer than planned. People said kind things, honest things. "You gave everything you had," one of them told him. "You're going to enjoy this," another said, smiling like it was settled. Michael thanked them. He meant it. For a while, he even believed them. Now the days opened slowly, like doors that didn't quite swing all the way. No bells, no voices calling his name from down the hall, no list waiting on his desk. He stood and rinsed his mug in the sink, though there were only 2 dishes there. He dried it carefully and set it upside down on the towel, lining it up with the edge like he always had. Some habits didn't ask permission to stay. For more than 30 years, he had been the one who arrived early and left late. Not because anyone demanded it, but because it seemed right. He had learned to listen before speaking, to wait before deciding. Students often remembered his presence more than his words. Teachers trusted the way he paused, the way he looked at a problem without rushing to smooth it over. He had never thought much about that. It was just how the work asked to be done. Now, standing at the porch door, he hesitated before stepping outside. The wood felt cool under his feet. The morning carried a faint smell of cut grass and dust. Beyond the yard, the fields stretched out, unchanged by titles or timing. Michael rested his hands on the railing. His shoulders felt loose, but unfamiliar, like something had been set down without asking where it belonged next. He wasn't sad. That surprised him. What he felt was quieter than that, a sense that something in him was still awake, still ready, but no longer being called on. He closed his eyes for a moment, not in a formal way, just long enough to breathe. Nothing answered him, nothing needed to. Still, a thought passed through, gentle and uninvited. Is this all there is now? It didn't trouble him. It simply stayed. Michael kept waking up early, even though nothing required it anymore. His body seemed to remember before his mind did. He stood in the bathroom, water running over his hands a little longer than necessary, then shut the tap and dried them carefully. He buttoned his shirt, missed one button, went back and fixed it. Small corrections, familiar ones. By mid-morning, the sun had worked its way across the living room floor. Dust showed in the light if he stood still long enough to notice. He passed the bookshelf and paused, fingertips resting on the edge of a binder. After a moment, he withdrew his hand and kept walking. He drove into town the way he always had, slowing near the old oak on the corner without thinking. The cafe door stuck slightly when he pulled it open. It always had. The bell rang anyway. "Morning, Mr. Bennett." He nodded, offered a quiet smile. His voice felt unused when he ordered his coffee. He sat by the window. From there, he could watch people cross the street, adjust their coats, hesitate before stepping off the curb. A man he recognized from the school board passed without seeing him. Someone else caught his eye and lifted a hand. Michael returned the gesture, then wrapped both hands around the warm mug. He stayed longer than before, not because he had something to do, but because leaving felt unnecessary. At home, the afternoon stretched thin. He opened a book, read a page, turned it back, tried again. The radio filled the room briefly, then didn't. At one point, he stood in the hallway looking toward the back door, unsure what had sent him there. He rested his palm against the wall, felt the cool paint, waited for the thought to return. It didn't. Later, he walked the fence line behind the house. One board leaned out of place. He pushed it back with his foot. It held. That seemed enough for now. As evening came on, he sat at the table with his wife. They ate quietly, passing the salt, the bread. She asked about his morning. He answered without detail. She nodded, accepting the shape of it. Once, she looked at him a moment longer than usual. Michael noticed the way her fork slowed before reaching the plate. He met her eyes, then looked down again. Neither of them filled the space. After dinner, he stepped outside alone. The air had cooled. Crickets had begun their steady work in the grass. He stood with his hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly forward, listening. There was a question there, somewhere beneath the sounds of evening. Not pressing, not urgent, just present. And this time, Michael didn't turn away from it. The days went on much the same. Not heavy, just unclaimed. Michael began to notice how his sense of time had shifted. He still glanced at the clock out of habit, even though there was nothing tied to it anymore. Some mornings lingered. Some afternoons seemed to fold in on themselves and disappear. One day, he reached for an old jacket he hadn't worn in a while. The fabric felt stiffer than he remembered. In the pocket, his fingers closed around a pen, the kind he used to carry without thinking. The ink was gone. The clip bent. He turned it once between his fingers, then set it on the dresser instead of putting it back. Outside, leaves had collected near the porch steps. Not enough to rake yet. He nudged a loose stone back into place with his shoe. When he straightened, he paused, hand on his knee, waiting for the small ache to pass. Later that week, he found himself slowing near the school. He told himself he was just passing through. Still, he pulled into the lot and parked farther from the entrance than he used to. The building looked familiar in a way that no longer belonged to him. The flag moved once, then settled. Inside, the hallway smelled of cleaner and paper. Lockers slammed. A bell rang, sharp and quick. Students moved past him in clusters, loud and distracted. No one paid him much attention. A teacher noticed him and stopped. "Well, look at you," she said, smiling. "It's good to see you." They spoke briefly, about the year, about how fast things were moving. When the bell rang again, she glanced down the hall and apologized before hurrying off. Michael stood there a moment after she left. His hands rested at his sides. He didn't feel the urge to follow, didn't feel the need to correct anything. That surprised him. On the drive home, he waved another car through at a stop sign, though it was his turn. The driver lifted a hand in thanks. Michael watched the truck pull away, then eased forward. That afternoon, he sat on the porch with a glass of water cooling his palm. The chair creaked when he leaned back. A bird settled on the fence, stayed just long enough to be noticed, then was gone. He thought about the years he'd spent carrying other people's problems, quietly, without calling attention to it. He hadn't missed the pace of it. What he noticed now was the absence of being needed. As the light shifted, he rested his hands together in his lap. He didn't speak, didn't shape a prayer. He simply stayed where he was. And in that stillness, something waited with him. It was a plain morning. Nothing about it stood out. Michael was at the shed, leaning into a loose hinge that had been bothering him. The screwdriver slipped once, scratched the metal, then caught. He steadied his grip and tried again. That was when he heard the truck. It pulled in slow, gravel shifting under the tires. Michael didn't turn right away. He finished tightening the screw, set the tool down, then wiped his hands on his jeans. The truck had seen better years. The red paint was faded. A young man sat behind the wheel, window down, arm resting stiffly on the door. He looked uncertain, like someone who'd already considered turning around. "Sorry to stop by," the man said. His voice was polite, careful. "Someone said you might be the person to talk to about school stuff." Michael felt the pause before answering, not hesitation exactly, more like surprise settling. He nodded once. "What's going on?" The man stepped out, early 20s, baseball cap still new, brim hardly bent. He shifted his weight as he spoke. "It's my daughter," he said. "She's having trouble. They keep calling me in. I don't always know what to say to her anymore." Michael listened. He noticed the man's hands kept opening and closing, like he was trying to find a place to put them. When he mentioned the calls, his eyes dropped to the gravel. They stayed where they were, the shed door half open behind them. Wind moved through the grass. A fly circled once and disappeared. Michael asked a few questions: how old she was, what she liked to do, who she spent time with. The man answered slowly, stopping now and then, as if checking whether he was saying it right. At one point, Michael leaned back against the shed, arms folded. The posture came without thought. He hadn't stood that way in a while. When the man finished, there was a quiet stretch, long enough to notice. "She might not need fixing," Michael said. His voice stayed even. "Sometimes kids just need someone to see them before things pile up." The man nodded, not right away. He looked out toward the yard, then back again. They spoke a little longer, no lists, no promises. When the man thanked him, it sounded honest, but unsure, like he hadn't expected the relief to come from such a small exchange. After the truck pulled away, Michael stayed where he was. The screwdriver was still in his hand. He turned it once, then set it down. He didn't feel accomplished, didn't feel called, but something had loosened. Later, in the kitchen, he sat at the table with a glass of water. Moisture gathered at the bottom, and he traced it with his finger without noticing. His shoulders felt lower than they had that morning. That evening, when the house grew quiet, Michael sat with the lights dimmed. He didn't try to name what had happened. He simply let the day rest. And for the first time in a while, it rested with him. Nothing shifted all at once after that, which felt honest. Michael still moved through his mornings the same way. He cracked eggs carefully, rinsed his mug before setting it upside down on the towel. He noticed, though, that he no longer stood as long in the doorway afterward, deciding where to go next. His feet seemed to choose before his thoughts did. One afternoon, he drove into town. The cafe smelled of coffee and something sweet baking in the back. The same woman stood behind the counter. She asked how he was, without looking up, already reaching for a mug. "Doing all right," he said. The words surprised him a little. They stayed. He took his usual seat by the window. Outside, a boy struggled with a loose bicycle chain, while his mother waited nearby, arms folded against the cold. A man passing by slowed, knelt, and worked the chain back into place. The boy tested it once, then rode off too fast, smiling. Michael watched until the sidewalk cleared again. He didn't follow the moment with a thought. He just let it pass. Back home, he worked in the yard for a while, trimmed a branch that scraped the siding when the wind picked up, raked leaves that had finally gathered enough to matter. His hands stiffened as the air cooled. He flexed them, felt the pull in his knuckles, then finished the row he was on. His wife came outside with 2 cups of tea. She handed one to him and sat beside him on the steps. The warmth seeped through the cup into his palms. Their shoulders touched lightly. "You seem different today," she said, not curious, just noticing. He took a sip. The tea was hotter than he expected. "Maybe," he said. After a moment, he added, "I don't know." She nodded and didn't press. That evening, he sorted through a box in the hall closet. Old papers, meeting notes, cards he'd kept without remembering why. He paused now and then, reading a line, then set it aside. At the bottom, there was a drawing. Crayon, a crooked hallway, his name written carefully at the top. He sat back on his heels and held it longer than the others. When he put it back, he left the box open. Later, he sat on the edge of the bed and unlaced his shoes slowly. Outside, the yard lay still in the dark. He stood at the window for a moment, hands resting at his sides. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't try to name what was happening. He only sensed, quietly, that this season had its own way of unfolding, and that if he stayed where he was, attentive enough, it would show itself in time. Michael stood in the grocery aisle longer than he needed to. He'd picked up the same box twice and set it back. The shelves were crowded. Someone's cart brushed past behind him. He shifted his own aside and murmured an apology without looking up. At the end of the aisle, a woman laughed softly to herself, holding a box at arm's length. He recognized her when she turned. Mrs. Carter. She used to help in the school library, always on time, always patient. "Michael," she said, surprised. "I thought that was you." They smiled, both a little unsure what to say next. "How's retirement?" she asked, resting the box against her hip. He paused. "Not long, just enough." "Still getting used to it," he said. She nodded, as if she understood exactly what that meant. They talked for a minute or two, about her grandson, about how small kids seemed to grow up all at once. When there was a lull, she looked down at the floor, then back at him. "I've been meaning to ask," she said, then stopped. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the box. "My grandson's having a hard time with reading. He tries, gets frustrated." Michael felt something familiar settle in his chest. Not urgency, more like recognition. "If you want," he said carefully, "I could spend some time with him. Just see how he's doing." She exhaled, her shoulders lowered. "That would be kind," she said, "really kind." They tore a corner from a receipt and exchanged numbers. Michael folded the paper once, then again, and slipped it into his pocket. That evening, he sat at the kitchen table with the paper opened flat beside his plate. The house was quiet, except for the sound of water running as his wife washed dishes. He watched her for a moment, then looked back at the number written in blue ink. He didn't feel certain about anything. He didn't feel assigned. He simply felt present. Before bed, he folded the paper neatly and set it on the counter where he'd see it in the morning. He turned off the light without turning on the radio, as he sometimes did. When he lay down, sleep came without effort. In the morning, he woke with the sense that the day would not be empty. That was enough. Mrs. Carter brought her grandson over on a Thursday. The boy stood in the doorway with his backpack still on, one strap twisted, the other sliding off his shoulder. One shoe was untied. He looked past Michael, then back again, taking in the room without comment. "This is Michael," Mrs. Carter said, her hand resting lightly between the boy's shoulders. "He worked at my school." The boy nodded once. His eyes stayed on the floor. Michael stepped aside and pointed toward the kitchen table. "You can set your bag there," he said. "We'll just sit for a minute." He poured 2 glasses of water. One wobbled slightly when he set it down. The boy wiped his palms on his jeans before picking his up. Michael noticed and didn't mention it. When they opened the book, the boy held it the wrong way. He caught it himself, turned it around and glanced up, waiting. Michael only nodded. They read slowly. Some words took longer than others. The boy stopped often, mouth moving without sound. Once, he rushed through a sentence and had to go back. Michael didn't correct him. He waited. "I'm not very good at this," the boy said at one point, not looking up. Michael leaned back in his chair. "Most people aren't at first," he said. "That's all right." The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have. Outside, a car passed, tires humming along the road. The boy's shoulders eased. His voice settled into a steadier pace. After a while, he closed the book himself. "That's enough for today," Michael said, standing. "We'll pick it up again next time." The boy nodded. He reached down and tied his loose shoe without being asked. At the door, Mrs. Carter thanked Michael quietly. He waved it off, not sure where to put the praise. When the house was empty again, Michael returned to the table. He straightened the book and ran his hand once over the cover, flattening a corner. He rinsed the glasses and set them upside down on the towel. The room grew still. As he turned off the light, Michael noticed that the thought of the next Thursday had already found its place. He didn't question it. He let it be. Thursday arrived without announcement. Michael noticed it when he crossed the date off the calendar that morning. The pen hesitated halfway through the line, then finished it. He stood there a second longer than usual, the calendar still open, before closing it and setting the pen down. The day went on. By mid-afternoon, he found himself clearing the kitchen table. He set the book down where it had been before, then paused, hands resting on the edge of the table, unsure when he'd decided to do that. 2 glasses waited near the sink. He left them there. Mrs. Carter's car pulled in just before 4. The boy came in with less hesitation this time. His backpack stayed on his shoulders for a moment, then slid off onto the chair. He glanced at the table, then at Michael. "Hi," he said. "Hi," Michael answered. They sat. Michael poured the water. The glasses landed steady. The boy opened the book to the marked page, the scrap of paper still tucked inside. He didn't need to be told where they'd left off. They read. The pauses were shorter now, though not gone. When the boy slowed, Michael waited. When he caught a word on his own, Michael nodded once and let it pass. At one point, the boy smiled, quick and surprised, after finishing a sentence cleanly. He didn't look up. Michael noticed anyway. Halfway through, the boy rubbed his eyes with the backs of his hands. "Can we finish this page?" he asked. Michael checked the clock out of habit more than need. "We can," he said. They finished. The boy closed the book carefully, lining it up with the edge of the table. At the door, Mrs. Carter thanked Michael. He didn't brush it aside this time. He just said, "You're welcome," and meant it. After they left, he stayed at the table a while. One hand rested where the book had been. The house felt settled, like it had been used for something simple and right. That evening, as he and his wife dried dishes, he mentioned the boy. "He's working at it," Michael said. She smiled, folding a towel. "That matters." Later, Michael paused in the doorway before turning off the light. The quiet was still there, unchanged, but it no longer pressed in on him. It felt like room, and as he went to bed, the week ahead didn't feel empty. It felt already spoken for, just enough. Some seasons don't end with noise, they settle. Maybe what stirred you in this story wasn't the boy, or the table, or the quiet Thursdays. Maybe it was the space in between, the moment when a life that once felt finished slowly revealed it wasn't. Purpose doesn't always return as a calling. Sometimes it returns as a chair pulled back, a place made ready. A small responsibility that asks nothing except presence. If this story felt familiar, it's because many lives reach this place and don't know how to name it. Success behind them, silence ahead, and a quiet fear that the best parts are already spent. They aren't. If you want to stay with stories like this, stories that don't rush, don't preach, and don't pretend, consider subscribing. Not for volume, but for depth. Not for answers, but for companionship. And when this video ends, another story will appear on your screen. It speaks to a different moment, but the same heart. Stay, let it meet you where you are.